Hi, it's Teisha Powell with Red White Truth. So you like shows like this? Not a problem. We're on social media. We're not on Twitter. We're on Instagram. Our information just popped up. We're on Gab. Information just popped up as well. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. All the information for our social media is being popped up. And you know what? The old-fashioned way. What about just going to our webpage? insurancelawyertish.com. Yeah, I still practice law, but you know what? I'm excited and I just want to bring to you more of these shows. If you want to see more of these programs, reach out to us on social media. We are looking forward to hearing from you. All right? So get us on social media. We're not on Twitter. We're on YouTube, Facebook, and we're on all others. All the information pop up. We'll see you. Hi, welcome to Talk Time with Teisha. I'm your host, Teisha Powell, and we have a special guest today, Kalee. She's a financial advisor with a big firm, Raymond James. So it's such an honor and a privilege to have Kalee on, and she's going to talk about money with us because with this inflation, I don't know about you all, but this money thing, I know it's kind of scary. So who better to have on than a financial advisor? So Kalee, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
So I know you have a book coming out on July 11th, Make Money Your Thing. Can you tell us about that book, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really excited. The book's finally coming out. As a writer, you go on the whole journey and then it's like, it feels like it lasts forever. But yes, coming out July 11th, but it's available for pre-order now. It's called Make Money Your Thing. And it's really like a combination of me really kind of putting together what I saw as like the missing piece when it came to like people and their finances and saving money and investing. So what I was kind of seeing time and time again is that like, I think it was just that people needed a little bit more of a confidence boost. Obviously, we don't learn a lot of these concepts in, early education or even through like college or university, but, it's an important part of our life because money affects, all of us in our adult lives. Money plays a role every day in our lives. So I wanted to create this book that kind of takes the reader on a confidence journey. So by the end of it, instead of saying things like, I'm not good with numbers, money isn't my thing, I'm not great with math, that's the people that are reading this book say like money is my thing, and just feeling really good and ready to take action. Because I think what confidence does is it leads to action, and that is the key when it comes to our money. We have to take action.
So you're talking about money and investing. Why is it important to invest? Because like I came to this country with one suitcase. I started my 401 at 18. I bought my first home at 22. But most, I'm 47 today. Most of my friends, they didn't invest any money. They didn't put any away. Can you, because money sometimes is a dirty word. I guess it represents greed. Why is it really that important for us to invest, Kalee?
That's a great question. And a few points you raised, that idea of like mindset and kind of the self-talk around it. So, we have to do a lot to shift that mindset where we're thinking like money is greed or we shouldn't talk about it, because absolutely we should be talking about money. That's how we learn about things. And it doesn't represent greed. Like money is neutral. I like to remind people it's not good or bad. We attach those feelings to it. And as a society, we have attached a lot of negativity to like, well, if you're talking about money or wanting more money, that means you're just focused on money and you're greedy and those things. And I think especially for women, that comes up and it leads to like these torn feelings of like, no, like I can't say, I'm okay with money or I like money or things like that. So in my book, I have a whole chapter about it, about how women have to be, getting to a point where they like their money and maybe even love their money. And that's okay. And we should be able to say those things out loud. But you're right with the investing piece, that's so key. And I would say that's one of the biggest like holdups for people, or the things holding people back financially, is that they're not investing. It's one thing to save money, like squirrel away, a certain amount of money off your paycheck every month or whatnot. But the second step is actually investing, because investing is what's going to help our money build and grow. If we're just putting away money and we want to save $1 million, let's say, well, then you literally have to put away $1 million. But if you invest and it compounds, I think in my book, I have an example where it's like you can put away $1,000 a month, growing at something like 8%, and it's 20 years you get to be over $1 million versus, it taking 80 some years if you're having to sock away that $1,000 a month and just sit on savings. So investing and the power of compounding growth is so important. And if you're nervous about it and it's uncomfortable to you, at least decide that like that's important for your long-term goals and that bucket of money. So money that you're thinking is for the future, for your retirement, for your financial freedom, you should be investing that portion because you likely have a longer term time horizon. And so yes, when we think about investing in stock markets, it can be like a wild ride and volatile, but over the long run, when we zoom out, the stock markets have always returned positive for investors. And that's the point of investing. So especially for those long-term goals, like your 401ks, your IRAs, maybe your Roth IRAs, if you're using those for longer-term savings, have that money invested. So step one is the saving, but step two, we can't forget, is the investing piece.
All right. So, we're in a really bad inflation. Gas is expensive. We're paying $150, a family of four paying $150 more per week in food. Should we really, Kaylee, should we still try to put money away now, or should we just wait inflation out? Should we put
that's a great question.
a month? I mean, what should we do?
Yeah, and that's really timely. And I think we're all really feeling the pinch. Like you go to the grocery store and you spend hundreds of dollars versus like, oh, I used to be able to spend half of that. And it feels like you get nothing. And you're like, oh, well, I need to still go back there midweek to get other stuff that I run out of. So it's really stressful and things have gotten really expensive. So we have seen really high inflation last year. We're still kind of in that scenario in 2023 right now. They're working on, trying to get that under control by raising interest rates. And that's the action they're taking to try to help kind of stop this. But the reality is it's still here. And you're right, like everyday items like food and our gas and things like that we need, it's just like sticker shock when we see how much we have to pay for it now. So, hopefully we can see it as a season and that it's not something that's going to be sustained, because what they like to do is target 2% annualized inflation. And of course, we're way above that right now. So they're doing all they can to bring that down. The hope is that they can get it down to there in the future. But again, the question mark is how long is that going to take? So you're right. In the meantime, it might be if you're really feeling the pinch that you have to maybe scale back on some of your savings and whatnot, because you don't want to have to go into debt or use like unnecessary things like credit cards when you still have savings going. You might have to put it on pause, but take this time to maybe take an inventory, because I think one of the biggest places that people could improve with their finances is having an awareness of how much money they have and what's coming in and what's going out. So take this as an opportunity to say, I'm going to assess, what am I spending every month? And you might find opportunities that you can cut out, right? So it's almost like a needs versus wants exercise. And we learn that early on, right? Like, what do you actually need? Or we tell our kids, like, is that when they're like, I need this toy? You're like, do you need it or is it a want? And so we kind of have to play that game maybe with ourselves and go through, see if there's any places that we can make some adjustments. And, it's not necessarily easy. Like there might be places where you're feeling like you have to sacrifice or cut back. And again, hopefully though, this is a season and we're going to work through it, we're going to get out of it. But if you can have that awareness piece, you're going to be more in control of your own funds. So you can say, okay, actually, we were going to do a renovation on our house, or we had to do this roof repair or something like that, but we can push it off a little bit further. So it's kind of taking that assessment and check on your interest rate. So if you have any sort of debt that's more like floating or variable rate, check in on that. Because if it's like gone up a lot from when you first maybe got that line of credit or something like that, it might make sense for you to also be putting your resources towards paying for that if the interest on it has gone gotten really high. So again, it's that awareness piece. Check in on these things. Look at what those numbers are now after inflation and interest rates have gone up a lot as well. And yeah, do the needs versus wants exercise and kind of decide, is there some things we can scale back on?
So you brought up something good, Kaylee, because I'm Jamaican, so my parents used to have me have save, and my husband, he's American, and he doesn't really big on the savings. But should we teach our kids to save? I mean, do we give them that's what I've been doing. I've been giving my 9-year-old twins like, $20 or $30 a month, and somebody's saying that's not good, but I think that's what I should do. And I'm just curious, should mommies today have help their kids to save? Should they be opening or helping them with little whatever 401s or whatever? What's your thought on that? Should kids start handling money very young, and if so, what age?
Yeah, I love that conversation because I love kids with money. I think it's so cute. Like when they go to the store and they pay with their own money, you're like, just like touches my heart. I'm like, that's so cute. I'm a money person. So yes, it's important. I've written another book that's coming out later this year. So it's coming out in September. It's called Money Wise Mabel's Bursting Bank. And it is a book. It's a picture book written for kids, for parents to like have that conversation. So it's about a little girl. She fills up her piggy bank, and instead of, having to just like spend it all right away, her mom's like, well, you can actually open a bank account and you can save it for something even bigger or save it longer. And so it's taking them on that journey where you can have that conversation with your kids. But I would say you're right, like having the conversations early, just being age appropriate. Like we don't have to get them stressed out and be like, oh my gosh, inflation and I can't even afford to feed you or something. Like we don't want to cause like stress with money, because we don't want to have that, then kind of ingrained in them. Like they're learning and listening to us all the time. So we want to put it in a positive light. But you're right, ways that we can teach them, and whatever you find works good for you. I introduced allowance for my daughter recently as well, and I found it made me spend like a lot less money on her, because before it was like she goes to the store and she's like, I want this, I want this, I want that, and I would get suckered into buying some of it. But now that she gets allowance, it was like, oh, well, you'll have to wait till you get your allowance to buy it, or you might have to save up a couple weeks to buy it. And so it's like I'm spending less money, and she's starting to learn how much things cost. Like she has her own Amazon cart and she puts things in it, and she's like, wow, my Amazon cart's up to like $700. I'm like, oh my gosh, Ivy. Reel it back. But obviously she can't afford that and doesn't have a credit card, so she can't buy anything on Amazon, thank God. But she's starting to learn the cost of items. Like when I tell her sometimes, I'm like, oh, that costs this much. She's like, oh, for that? Like, why would that be so expensive? So it's interesting how, and she's 8 years old, so we can start getting them that perspective. And by sharing these conversations with them, taking them shopping with us and talking about like comparison, prices and the different sizes we can buy, and introducing allowance if that works for you and your family. Again, I found it worked really well for me too. But yes, having these conversations with kids as early as possible, because it's like these concepts are math and they build on each other, right? Like when we learn math, we learn addition, subtraction, and then we learn multiplication and whatnot. So money is the same thing. We learn just about like money and making change and how much do we need and what are credit cards, and it builds on that. So anything you can do with your kids, keep them in the conversation. But yeah, keep it positive too.
That sounds good. So you're saying around 8 probably is the time. So I'm hoping that parents are hearing that. So you talked about like some of the biggest mistakes that people make with their finances, because I mean, I don't know about you. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. What are we doing, Kaylee? Tell us the mistakes that we
That's a great question. So, and I like to kind of spin it too of like, it's money lessons too, right? Because mistakes make us feel like there's a lot of like shame and guilt around money. So let's just talk about our money lessons, or where, areas of improvement. I think a big one is like the self-talk and the mindset. So like I said, with my book title called Make Money Your Thing, it was because I was hearing over and over again, so many women just writing themselves off and saying like, I'm not good with math. I'm not good with finances. I don't understand all this investing stuff. And it's just like, well, there's so much power in what you're saying and your words and that messaging that, that's going to be the reality that you experience. And so give yourself grace and just remind yourself, I didn't learn this. So it's like, I don't have the knowledge maybe, but it could be, I'm making money my thing. I'm building my awareness and understanding. I'm getting to have a better, understanding of how much money I make and where my money's going and things like that, instead of those negative ones. Because and I would also attribute it to like social media and society and kind of all the sources we hear. Like they're also making us feel like crap, I think, about our money a lot of the time too. Like we're behind and we're gonna like retire and we won't have any money and we'll be eating cat food and things like that, women say. I'm like, oh my gosh. So that's very like doomsday. And how can we change that? How can we make it positive to say, I can learn this. I can figure this out. It's not super complicated, but again, it's give yourself grace. You haven't maybe learned a lot along the way. So I think that's huge and key as like a starting point is change that self-talk, change how you're feeling or like viewing it. And then another one is that avoidance, no action, procrastination. Like how many times it's like, and it probably leads to that not having confidence area, but people just not doing anything, right? It's just like, I'll deal with it next week, or maybe when I get that credit card paid off, I'll start to pay attention to it, or once I get this new job or my kids are older. Like there's all these excuses in life. Like we're all very busy and we can make every excuse in the book of like why we don't have time for it now. But it's like, it's the one thing you don't want to procrastinate on is money, because you're missing out on growth, on compounding. So it's like procrastinate on, reorganizing your garage or something like that. Go ahead by all means. But when it comes to money, don't put that off. Like take action now. And, simple things you can take and do right now is, I'm going to make an extra payment on my credit card today. I'm going to check in on, what is my mortgage rate of interest? Just like, I want to know more. I want to understand more. I'm going to listen to a money podcast. Like there's little things you can do every day very easily just to take action, to stop putting it off. And then I guess the last one you pointed out too is that idea of getting invested. It's so important. And I especially see this with women. It's like they sit on piles of cash. Like I came across a woman who was just like had $1 million just sitting in her bank account. And you're like, what? Like you need to invest it. You need to have your money working for you. Even something as simple as like a high yield savings account is earning you a good return on your cash. But some people have it just they're earning nothing. So it's like we spend so much time making money, earning money. We put so much into what we do for our money, but it's like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing for our money? Like, how are we giving back to it? And by having it work for you through at least using like a high yield savings account and things like that for your short-term, finances, and investing the portion that's longer term into the markets and having that growth is like the best thing you can do. So making sure that investing is part of it too. Like step one is putting it in the account, but just because it went in the account doesn't mean it's automatically invested. Check in on that.
I could answer that question for you because I was one of those people as well where I save in a savings account, which was very dumb. It's because we're scared. We work so hard. I mean, I've been working since I was 18. For 7 years, I did 70 hours. So, when you kind of like get even 10,000, you're like, I don't want to lose it. And then we don't have the information. So, but you're right. It has to grow. So the only way for it to grow is investing. So I have 2 more questions because we're running out of time. I want to know, Kalee, why is it so hard to save? Why is it such a hard thing to do? It's you've got to tell why and how. Is it hard for me alone or is it hard for other people? It's like the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things to do. It's like, so why is it so hard to save? Tell us.
You're right. That's a big question. And I mean, I probably don't know, like, I think it's just, open to people's interpretation too, but I would say a big part of it is like our beliefs about ourselves, our worthiness, our relationship with money. I'm very much into like the energy of things. And I grew up with a single mom and money was really a source of struggle. So I give a story in my book of this example, but when I was seeing like other little girls get the Christmas presents that I asked for and I didn't get anything close, like I got a pair of shoes or something more practical, which of course made sense in our scenario. But at that time it was like a worthiness, like we didn't have enough money and it was always like we don't have enough, and then it became like an internalized I am not enough. So I think we have to look at like that relationship of like self-love, self-worth, and saving and money too. Because if you're finding you're saying things like, I can never save, or money always comes in and then it just goes out right away, well, that again, it's like that's setting, the cycle of what is going to happen. And it might be too coming from our youth and what we saw from our parents growing up. So you have to really shift the beliefs you have in what it means to save. Like really think about it and say like, why am I not saving? What is it that I feel when I think about saving? Like, do I feel like I'm not worthy about having a nice, abundant resources there for me that I can access at any time? Do I not believe that I'm like worthy of creating that? It's almost like too, I realized that it's like, I was always in a state of almost like fight or flight growing up like that when it came to money. So it was like, I got used to it. It was comfortable. Like the money drama, it was like not having money was like my comfort zone. It's like, oh, not having enough and having to figure it out and just make ends meet and stuff. That's what I grew up knowing. So I thought that's the reality. And then you were start to fulfill it yourself. And it's like, money doesn't have to be dramatic and stressful. Like we can change that. And so it's really like diving deeper into where is it coming from? What do you believe? And then doing that awareness exercise of how much money is coming in, how much money is going out, because that's the number side. So we can do like I like the fluffy like energy and stuff like that. But then there's the reality that we have to also take stock of what's going in, what's going out. If what's going out is more than what's going in, you cannot save. Like the math doesn't work in your favor. So it's deciding, can I change that? Can I make adjustments? Or even just doing that exercise for the awareness and being like, wow, I didn't even know I was spending that much on takeout every month or whatnot. I'm going to change that. And make an adjustment. And also automating savings. Like so much of us, our money just goes out, like it comes in and it just goes out. So can we automate the savings where it goes out, but it goes to our account for us instead of paying someone else? And that's that concept of pay yourself first in the financial world. We always say pay yourself first. So when you get a paycheck, have some automatically go out to a savings account for you or something like that set up, because that sends a powerful message that you're like, I deserve this, this is for me. Okay. And now I'll pay those other people.
And so, one of the TikTok trend that's going on now, it's young people. And they think because of this inflation that the older generation, we had it, well, maybe not my generation, but the 65-year-old, they had it good because houses were cheap, and they think that they're never going to catch up. Do you have any hope is there any hope for the young generation in America? Because we are still one of the richest countries in the world, and I do know the inflation is pretty bad. Do you think the young generation is going to even get a shot at being like the older generation with owning a house? I mean, what's your...
You're right. Like, and times are though different then too. Like we have to consider interest rates are also really high for them at a point. Like in the 80s, interest rates were something like 80 or 18% on a mortgage. So it all kind of like moves in flow. But we can still look at a chart of housing prices compared, like inflation adjusted compared to now and then, and it still is quite high. So it is very stressful for young people to think that. And I guess it's just assessing, like, if that's really a goal and you want to own a house, like, by all means, you don't have to own a house. There's different analysis done of like renting versus owning, and it's really interesting actually. Sometimes it's not a big difference. But if it's something that you're really passionate about and you really want to have, then by all means, like, work towards that. Work, very hard in those younger years, saving up for your down payment. Like, I remember I wanted to go to university and my mom couldn't really help me financially to pay for it. So I paid for it myself. And at the time I worked 2 jobs. I was going from like Pizza Hut to IKEA, back and forth, working double shifts. And I did it though. And I made it through, paid for my full university by myself. So don't just think like, well, it's not possible. Find a way. Like, we're also in a time of like, side hustle galores, and like young people are so good and savvy with the TikTok TikToks and the social media
yes,
where you
yes.
can find opportunities for them to, you know, make money and have another job. And so your two jobs, like I had to have, maybe are a lot less stressful because maybe one's a little bit more passive and automated than having to, stand on your feet or serve people pizzas or things like that. But I think it's very possible. And you know, so still don't like let it out of your sights and think like this can't happen. It's just, you got to get creative sometimes.
Yes, and Kaylee, I went through the same thing as well. I want to tell young people as well, the same thing Kaylee said. I too did 40 hours a week and then went to school at night. It's not forever. It was only for 7 years. And do it while you're young, because now that I'm 47, looking back, I thought I must have been crazy. I wouldn't be able to do it today. So young people, I know it's tough, but it's only for a short period of time. I mean, it takes 7 years to get a law degree or graduate degree. And you're right, that's what most people did it back in our days. We had to work full time and go to school at night. And you guys even have it better than us now. They have online school. So, and you could work from home online. So you're doing a lot better. We were driving for like 1 hour, 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
So,
Or taking the bus too. And like, when you
right?
don't have
Yes.
a car. Yeah.
But we did make it through, right, Kaylee?
Yeah.
That's our generation made it through. So young people, do not give up. There's hope. Kaylee, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
watching. We'll be back soon. See
Thank
real
you so much.